Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing. He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Oh yeah.
The nation. Walmart Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Wednesday. We're gonna have a fun show today, as usual. Gonna make fun of course, Republicans. As usual. Yes, we've got some chuds here, including whether or not the COVID-19 is the fault of penguins or something. It's a bizarre video. You're going to love it. We have, of course, James Comer and his hypocrisy about influence peddling. You're not going to be surprised. This new report. We are also going to be talking about a Republican who accused his opponent of domestic violence, being arrested for domestic violence. You know, because of course, right? Yeah, of course. Of course. And then we also have disastrous, news from Michigan here. Thanks to the Supreme Court, discrimination is legal and people are already taking advantage of it. So that's a disastrous story. And then, of course, I'm going to defend trans women in professional sports. Against Jesse Waters. So, saying stupid things. And we're going to talk about it. Okay. What did I miss about penguins? Nothing yet. But we are going to talk about penguins. Yes, penguins. Interesting stuff. Okay. Anyway, before we jump into it, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Helps us out greatly. With that said, why don't we dive into it. Jesse Troubled Waters. More like Dirty Waters, but yeah. Excuse me. Oh, something in my throat today. How deep does the stupidity go? 3 levels deep? Wish I had that quote. Soundboard. That's an old one. Okay. So let's start out with, of course, James Comer. A little bit of hypocrisy. Republican Representative James Comer has been going around claiming that President Joe Biden had taken some bribes as part of an influence peddling scheme to benefit his foreign paymasters. Yes. However, a new report out actually shows that it was Comer who had himself been influenced by money from not foreign paymasters, to be fair, but some domestic paymasters in Kentucky. So now, why don't we dive into this? According to a report from the Daily Beast, back in 2008, when Comer was in the Kentucky legislature, he had voted against the building of 9 new casinos. See, at the time, James Comer was, he was representing a very small, very conservative community, and they did not like casinos. Public polling was against the building of these casinos because they viewed gambling very skeptically. Okay, and we're not really interested in gambling here. This is a Christian conservative community. God damn it. Although they probably wouldn't say that last part. Or maybe they would. Who knows? Now, that said, those new casinos were actually a top priority of the state's influential horse racing industry. It is Kentucky, after all. Now, they actually have a close to a monopoly over all the gambling in the state of Kentucky. And so they've got a lot of money and they got a lot of political power. As I said before, his constituents in this very small, rural, conservative Christian district, Comer's, constituents, his voters, viewed gambling in a very negative light. And through 2010, Comer stuck to that position. I'm going to represent you. I'm going to keep voting against these attempts to, bring gambling. Because gambling brings ruin, it's sinful, all that stuff, right? Okay, so again, in 2010, Comer filled out a candidate survey in which he expressed opposition to allowing even virtual slot machines at Kentucky horse racing tracks. However, in 2011, that changed after Comer won the race for Kentucky Agriculture Commissioner in that same year. So it turns out that in his run, he had received the maximum contribution from the CEO of Churchill Downs, the owner of the legendary Kentucky Derby racetrack, the state's leading gambling operator, and an unrelenting political force, according to the article. Now, wow, that's just 1 year. That turnaround after that was quick, all right? Comer, after he had won, testified in favor of a constitutional amendment to build 7 new gambling facilities around the state. Even though the amendment failed, Comer had still become, through his advocacy, a favorite of Churchill Downs, a development that substantially benefited him politically and personally. And by personally, we mean financially. All right. So now, let me give you the details on that. In 2013, Comer was still carrying tens of thousands of dollars in debt from his 2011 run, the byproduct of an 11th hour $100,000 loan he gave to his own campaign. That spring, one of Kentucky's most influential men held a fundraiser at his Louisville home to retire Comer's debt. Brett Hale, then senior vice president of Churchill Downs. Yes, that's right. Churchill Downs. Oops. Now, they reported that thanks to maximum level contributions from Hale and other Churchill Downs brass, the event eliminated Comer's outstanding debt of roughly $28,000 with a haul of $36,000. Churchill Downs employees accounted for about $5,300 of that total. All of this sounds like some pretty normal campaign contribution finance stuff, which I like to call legal bribes. It's corruption. That's what it is. Now, in this case, however, there's an extra layer added to it. You see, that campaign debt was owed to Comer himself. Again, he, at the last minute, loaned himself, his campaign, over $100,000. And look, he had that debt. And then since he wasn't running for office at the time, he was able to pocket the rest of that money. So he took the money raised by Churchill Downs and all these, very, very wealthy and influential people and stick it right in his pocket. That's it. Didn't have to go back to his campaign because, again, he loaned his campaign money from himself. And so that campaign is essentially paying him back, puts that money, takes it, puts it in his pocket. So now, the thing here is, the hypocrisy about this is you can clearly see that he changed his political positions due to campaign contributions from his new friends, and then was able to pocket a significant amount of money because of their intervention. Now, that is almost the exact same thing that he is accusing Biden of doing. Going out there saying, oh, influence peddling, pay to play. Oh, you're getting all this personal money, $5 million from the Chinese to then benefit the Chinese. Really, what about all the money that you got from the horse race industry, the gambling industry, to change your position to being now pro-gambling? Weird. Now, there's more. In 2015, just before he lost his run for governor, Comer was made an honorary co-chairman of the pro-gambling group Kentucky Wins, whose goal was to put gambling expansion to a public vote. Now, look, they haven't been very successful in that, but it's not like for lack of trying. Comer has been a very, very big ally to this group. Now, according to Crew Litigation Counsel Stuart McPhail, which, again, unfortunate name, he said, what you're seeing is a politician who is opposed to this ideologically, and money starts to flow to them before there is any apparent change in view, and lo and behold, their view starts to change. There's no speech to persuade anyone there. Money isn't buying ads or newspaper articles. It's being used, at the very least, to buy influence. There's a story you could tell that he just switched his views on this for pure political ambitions, or he was persuaded by other facts. It's a reason why it's often hard to suss out corrupt actions from innocent ones. Now, look, of course, for me, you know what it's about. It's about the money. It's always about the monies. Of course. And so, monies, political ambitions, when it comes down to it, follow the money. The gambling industry in Kentucky has a ton of money to give to politicians in legal bribes. That's what this is. And that's exactly what they did with Comer. They're like, hey, here's this guy, this small-time farmer. Because, again, that's what Comer ran as. I'm just a small-town regular farmer. Look at me. I'm James Comer. I will represent conservative Christians in our government. Oh, the money. Oh, you're going to give me money? For gambling? Yes. I am now pro-gambling. Because of course it's because of my my constituents. They really want all these casinos. Come on. Now look, again, he's trying to claim that Biden took $5 million from China to change his position on China, which he didn't. Again, for one, there's no actual evidence that Biden had received money through his son from China and then changed his position on China. His position on China has been, again, pretty consistent on that, okay? So there's no actual policy change going on here. They can't point that out. Now, that's not to say that Biden hasn't, taken positions that have earned him money. In this case, public option. Have we heard anything about the public option since Joe Biden got elected? No, of course not. Now, you could say, well, that's maybe because he never believed in the public option. Okay, yeah, I generally believe that. But he did talk about it a lot during his campaign. And then, of course, you have money from the hospitals and the, for-profit health insurance industry that goes to a lot of these politicians, Biden included. And you get the fact that, he's just not talking about it because it was never one of his actual real policy goals that I could say. So, that I could see. I mean, he could prove us wrong and start coming out and saying, public option. But so far, I don't see it. And he's also talked about vetoing Medicare for all that if it ever came up on his desks. And so that said, that's the system on money in politics. Nearly all politicians take money from corporations, or they're super PACs that will spend millions of dollars from special interests to run ads on politicians' behalf. Now, if Republicans like Comer were really interested in stopping corruption, well, then they would start there, right? The fact that they never talk about money in politics at all shows you that they don't actually care about real corruption, just fake corruption. And that's really it. Okay. So let's talk about penguins. Here. Okay. A New York Republican believes that penguins are to blame for scientists discounting the COVID lab leak theory.
That all of a sudden you did a 180 and it couldn't possibly come from a lab, or maybe, but you're all saying that, this was by sure from nature. What happened in those 3 days?
Well, we examined the genomes more closely. We looked at other coronaviruses, and there was some new data that came. Where
did that data come from?
The scientific literature, the publication of the pangolin genomic sequence showed that there was a receptor binding domain that was very close to the...
And exactly what my colleague here brought up.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
and it was a very important piece of data because it showed that a lot of the theories about, the virus having been engineered or put together in a laboratory were not true, because here was a virus in nature that had a receptor binding domain with exactly the same structure.
I just find it all interesting based on what my other colleague here, the chairman of the committee, said with reply to the issue of the penguins. But
penguins? Penguins. What? Okay. Oh, all right. So hold on. That was Republican Representative Nicole Malliotakis, right? And apparently she is confusing penguins with pangolins. So, all right, let's just go through here and kind of show you the difference here. All right. So here's a penguin. Okay. That's a penguin. We know that's a penguin. Okay. Very obvious. Here's a pangolin. So, pangolin, penguin, pangolin, penguin. Big difference. Big difference there. Okay. And yes, that is I believe that's either emperor or penguin. And different types of penguin. Okay, I'm gonna get sidetracked here. Okay, I'm gonna get stun locked. But there's clearly a difference. Clearly a difference. All right. And so again, not the same thing. Wow. Okay. So now let's get into a little bit of the research here that's being referenced. Okay, and I think that's pretty relevant, right? Especially since we're talking about pangolins and penguins and COVID-19. Well, back in 2020, researchers found a portion of the pangolin's genomic sequence was a 99% match for COVID-19. Oh, interesting. And so based on that, result, scientists speculated that pangolins may have been an intermediary host passing the virus to humans. So again, that's something that scientists do. They're like, oh, this is interesting. And then what they do is that they test and then they retest and they try to not find the right answer. They just try to eliminate all the wrong answers through testing. That's what scientists do. So now, at this point, we still don't actually know exactly where COVID came from. Okay? Now, the lab leak theory is one possibility. It hasn't been proven, hasn't been disproven. In fact, just last month, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a report that's a declassified 10-page report that was essentially inconclusive on the origins of COVID. From the New York Times, last month, the 10-page report said scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology did conduct research on coronaviruses, in some cases had inadequate safety measures, that's an issue, and had genetically engineered coronaviruses. Oh, interesting. Now, the same report, however, noted that intelligence agencies found nothing that tells them the work at the laboratory had ended up causing the pandemic. So, in fact, the report said that IC has no information, however, indicating that any WIV genetic engineering work has involved SARS-CoV-2, a close progenitor, or a backbone virus that is closely related enough to have been the source of the pandemic. All agencies continue to assess that both a natural and laboratory-associated origin remain plausible hypotheses to explain the first human infection. So, again, we don't necessarily know the answer, but that's what science is for. They're going to continue to rule out things until they get to the answer. But I can tell you what the answer is not. I'm going to tell you what didn't happen. Penguins. There you go. Okay. Yeah. So let's go on to the next story here. I'll leave it to the scientists to figure out which is literally their job and not Mrs. Maliatakis. Weirdo stuff. In what is another case of every accusation being a confession, an Ohio State Republican representative has been charged with domestic violence after he had ran a campaign accusing his Democratic opponent of doing domestic violence. Okay, so now State Representative Bob Young, who's a Republican from Greene in Ohio, was charged Saturday with domestic violence and disrupting public services, reported the Ohio Capital Journal. Young was arrested after allegedly striking his wife in the face with his open hand, later following her to his brother's house, where the legislator allegedly instigated a fight with him. So, assaulting two people. Lovely. Now, the report states that he had lowered his shoulder, charged at another individual, assuming that it would be his brother, but we don't know. During the altercation, one person was cut with broken glass. Someone tried to call 911. Young had grabbed the person's phone, allegedly, and threw it into a pool. So, pretty serious altercation and allegations. It's not good for Mr. Young, Mr. Robert Young. Now, as a result of this, you have Republicans, some Republicans that are calling for him to resign. Others, two female representatives from across the aisle, by the way, are getting together to reintroduce a bill to provide protections for victims of domestic violence. State Representative Juanita Brent, a Democrat of Cleveland, and Representative Sarah Carruthers of Hamilton, a Republican, are now working together to bring that bill back to a vote. Juanita Brent said, quote, "We cannot keep talking about prayers and responses for those affected by domestic violence. The state of Ohio needs to make that change and pass this law." So now, I tried to find out whether or not this guy actually voted against this piece of legislation. Couldn't find any information on it, but I wouldn't be surprised. Okay. So I would love to give you that information. Maybe if this comes up for a bill and he's still in office, because so far he says he ain't going nowhere. Well, we'll see. We'll see. With that, members of his own party are calling for his resignation. For example, House Speaker Jason Stevens. By the way, they went to a fundraiser together that night. Apparently, after Mr. Young had left is when the altercation had happened. Now, others are saying, let's not be too hasty now. In fact, here's State Representative Josh Williams, a Republican, saying, I don't want to jump the gun as it pertains to Representative Young. As a defense attorney, I want my client to have the benefit of innocent until proven guilty. Right. So now, I mentioned the irony, so let me get into more details, right? Young is serving his second term after he was elected in 2021. He's being sued by a former Democratic rival over an ad he had created with the help of the state Republican Party, alleging that he was guilty of domestic abuse. Former opponent Matt Shaughnessy is seeking more than $1 million in general and punitive damages in his lawsuit because he had never been charged or convicted of domestic violence. So amazing, right? I mean, amazing. This guy goes and runs an election and then wins after he had baselessly claimed that his opponent was a domestic abuser. Ran ads saying, look at this wife beater. What a terrible person. Never elect this guy. And then it comes out that you're the abuser. Oops. Oh, actually, you know what? It's not just oops. Whoopsie. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Wow. I couldn't imagine. Couldn't imagine. Now, Shaughnessy talked about this and he said, quote, I'm actually saddened to hear of these allegations. Is it ironic that the guy who accused me of being guilty of domestic violence? Absolutely. But domestic violence always has victims, and my thoughts and prayers go out to Mr. Young's family right now. So look, I can only imagine how much restraint you had to have to not rip this guy a new ass. Okay? Like, especially like, first of all, you accuse me of domestic violence, and then it turns out that you're the one doing domestic violence. Oh, it would be so hard not to say something. To not just go ballistic. Not in a physical way, but just to go on a tear. Now, he got in a little bit of a jab, and that's good. Saying, oh, a little ironic, right? Just a little bit. Oh, I'd have gone a lot harder. Again, rhetorically. But I would have ripped into him. But I guess some people are nicer than I am, have a little bit more class. But again, you get somebody who's saying these awful things about you with no basis in reality. Calling you a white beater, it's just the dirtiest of dirty politics when you don't have any evidence of it. So, yeah, I guess I got to give him some credit for having the restraint to try to go the classy route. But at the same time, no, this guy deserves much, much worse if these allegations are indeed true. Okay. Moving on. Just days after the Supreme Court legalized discrimination against the LGBTQ community, the owner of a Michigan hair salon announced that she will no longer service members of that community. So now, Christine Geiger, the owner of Studio 8 Hair Lab in Traverse City, Michigan, said that she is exercising what she considers her free speech to discriminate against LGBTQ people, specifically trans people, and members of the queer community. What did they ever do to you? What did any of these people do to you? Well, nothing. But here's what she said. Quote, if a human identifies as anything other than a man/woman, please seek services at a local pet groomer. Geiger wrote in a Facebook post. Jesus, you are not welcome at the salon, period. So let me just tell you first. We told you so. We told you this is exactly what was going to happen. The people that are like, oh, you lefties, you're freaking out about this. Nobody's going to really, use this to discriminate against people. You're just making it up. No. This is exactly what they wanted to do. This is what they were trying to do. And this is what they're doing. 100%. And they start off, of course, and notice how they dehumanize people. Again, telling you, oh, if you use pronouns other than man, if you use pronouns at all, you're not welcome. Go to the dog groomer. Literally comparing trans people to animals. I mean, that's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Horrible person. Just horrible. But she swears, I'm not homophobic or anything like that. No. In a comment in the community Facebook group, Geiger said, quote, I have no issue with LGB. It's the TQ plus that I'm not going to support. She goes on to say horrible things, horrible untrue things. For example, quote, for those who don't know what the plus is for, it is for MAP, minor attracted person, aka pedophile. No, that's not what that stands for. Plus basically includes asexual, intersex people, and people who are questioning their identity, who don't know gender queer, gender fluid, things like that. It has nothing to do with pedophiles. You're just lying about this. The LGBTQI+ community has never encouraged or supported pedophilia. She is 100% lying. Again, horrible person. Lying. But, and by the way, she is a bigot. 100%. Now, the vast majority of child predators, by the way, pedophiles, are actually straight cis men. So let's just get that straight. 100%. Okay? Now, she also wrote this. I'm admitting that since I am not willing to play the pronoun game, I didn't know it was a game. I didn't know that actually, referring to people in a respectful way is the pronoun game. Although it must be a game to you, and you must be very, very comfortable in your life to think that this is a big problem. And to think that it's okay to alienate potential customers because you're not comfortable with them. But she says, I'm not willing to play the pronoun game or cater to requests outside of what I perceive as normal. This probably isn't the best option for that type of client. She says, if you're gonna, again, pronouns, right? So obviously the first thing she's got to mention is pronouns. If you're not going to use pronouns, you're going to have a really hard time with the English language, That said, the backlash here on this was swift. A lot of people in the comments telling it basically like it is, that she is bigoted, that she's being incredibly transphobic, discriminatory, etc., etc., etc. And despite her saying that she's more than willing to take the first rounds of strikebacks in order to galvanize others to bark back, that's her own words, bark back, after she had just dehumanized transgender people, compared them to animals. She decided, ooh, it's a little too hot in here now, and deleted the salon's Facebook page and sent their Instagram page to private. Oh, what's the matter? You can't take the heat? I know. She's probably going to now blame the
woke mob.
It's the woke mob. They came for me. I thought you were ready to, deal with criticism. What happened? Now you're upset. Now you can't handle the heat. You can't take the smoke. Oh, maybe you shouldn't have lit the fire. Would have been so much easier to just keep giving people haircuts and taking their money. But no, you had to be a little crying bitch about it. And now you're here. Did it to yourself. Now, her biography, by the way, read, a private conservative business that does not cater to woke ideologies. Yes.
Woke.
The wokers.
How dare those woke people with their pronouns try to exist in society by getting haircuts? I mean, look, this is where it starts, okay? Obviously, we know that it's not required to go to a place to get a haircut. Obviously, I mean, maybe I'm not the expert on hair. Gotta be fair about that. But I do know something about discrimination and how it starts. And this is where it starts. Services like this. Then it starts to spread. What happens when restaurants start doing it? What happens when grocery stores, gas stations, and then it spreads to doctors' offices? I mean, this is the point of all of this stuff. To freeze people out of society, in this case based on gender identity, but we've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen with race. This is how it starts, and it generally takes you down a pretty bad road. But understand that this was never just about bathrooms. It was never just about gay wedding cakes. It was never about gay wedding websites, which again, that entire Supreme Court case wasn't even based on any gay wedding. It was based on a hypothetical, and the people that were cited in the case were not actually a gay couple at all. It was a straight person. It didn't matter though. It was a weird hypothetical that she just, the person who filed this lawsuit grabbed out of nowhere and said, well, just the fact that I might have to maybe in the future make a wedding website for a gay couple, that makes me very uncomfortable. It hurts my fifis, and I'm very, very unhappy with this possibility. And I'm just not even going to get into the business. And so, I'm just going to try and deny people's rights so that I can maybe make a wedding website and make a few bucks, but don't have to service those terrible gays. That's what she's about. And that's what this is all about. I do not see this as any different than putting up a no blacks or no Jews sign in your windows. You don't think that, that's happened before. That's why we have laws against discrimination. Because there are people that, if given a chance, will discriminate for ridiculous reasons. And now, thanks to the Supreme Court, it's legal. They can do that. Look, here's the thing. Trans people have always existed. They always will exist, no matter how hard you try to clamp down in their existence. Because at the end of the day, it's not a choice. Their identity is not a choice. We don't choose to be cis. We don't choose to be trans. It happens. And you could force them all day to hide who they are on the outside, and it doesn't change who they are on the inside. You can't take the trans out of people. The only thing you're doing is forcing them to lie for your comfort and your convenience, when it literally has no negative effects on your life whatsoever. Never at all. Bigots, understand, bigots are selfish. They're selfish, scared, pathetic, small people. Small brains. Can't seem to understand very, very simple concepts of, hey, let people be people. Let people live their lives. Now, one more thing that I want to point out, specifically about Geiger. A lot of these transphobes think, well, we're just out there protecting the children. You don't understand. We're protecting the children from dangerous pedophiles and mutilation and forced transition, which, again, none of this is happening. Okay? But she says we're protecting the children, and yet this woman particularly has a history of putting other people, specifically children, potentially in danger. How so? Well, she appears to be making some personal choices that put people in danger. In 2009, that same hair salon owner was charged with a third offense, drunk driving, and second offense, operating a vehicle with a suspended license charge. Her records had shown her driving drunk twice the previous year. So she gets blitzed and then jumps behind the wheel. You don't think that's a danger to children? In 2021, 13,384 people died in drunk driving related accidents. When it comes to children, in 2021, that same year, more than 230 children were killed in drunk driving accidents. Now, you choose to take a drink and get behind the wheel. And when you do that, that can definitely harm children and even mutilate them when they get into car accidents. And by the way, look, since she's a conservative and was probably very, very pro Second Amendment, oh, look, hey, I'm fine with Second Amendment. But you know what? One very negative thing about that, negative consequence of having so many guns is that guns kill a lot of children. In fact, guns are the leading cause of death for U.S. children and teens. It actually surpassed car accidents in 2020. Now, you have, again, guns. You have car accidents. You have drunk driving. All harming and killing children. But how many children are trans people killing? How many people have died as a result of an LGBTQ person getting a frickin' haircut? Can't really cite any because it's not real. It's not a real problem that exists in our society. Trans people existing. Whereas, again, drunk drivers, like this incredibly irresponsible bigot, they are harming children. They are harming people. This is all about their own selfish fears and a desire to virtue signal to their conservative friends that have suddenly decided, literally for no reason, that trans people are a threat. Moving on. Fox host Jesse Waters claims that he's personally done more for women's sports than United States women's national soccer team star Megan Rapinoe. So now Rapinoe on Monday gave an interview with Time Magazine going after the right-wing's war on transgender women, sports. Here's what she said. Quote, "We as a country are trying to legislate away people's full humanity. It's particularly frustrating when women in sports is weaponized. Oh, now we care about fairness? Now we care about women's sports? That's total BS. Show me all the trans people who are nefariously taking advantage of being trans in sports. It's just not happening. Now, of course, apparently this appears to be a very hotly debated topic, even on some portions of the left. But Jesse Waters is going to particularly have a even more awful take.
The soon-to-be retired soccer star advocating for transgender players on the U.S. women's soccer team, regardless of whether it displaces a biological woman. Quote, she says this: "I see trans women as real women. It's particularly frustrating when women's sports is weaponized. Oh, now we care about fairness? Now we care about women's sports? That's total bull bleep." Rapinoe has spent most of her career fighting for female athletes to get paid the same as the men's team. Jesse, she also said that she doesn't believe it is true that trans issues like this leads to violence, but also she said that it's not a problem with physiology, that biologically it's not a big difference, when we've seen evidence that it obviously is.
So she puts ideology over biology? So is Rapinoe saying that she'd be okay with having an all-male U.S. women's soccer team?
Apparently so, as long as they get paid the same, I guess.
So I guess there's no problem in the shower, but she wouldn't be okay if a guy took her spot on the team and she rode the pine. She would never be okay with that. She doesn't want to shower with men. She would not be okay with that. Notice how, Dana, it's only men trying to compete against women in sports. It's not women trying to play men's sports. It's men trying to play women's sports.
All right, so I'm going to stop there and point out that Jesse Waters, of course, is wrong. That's not exactly a shocker, a revelation, but I'm going to tell you why. So, for one, weirdo Jesse Waters is thinking about trans people taking showers. That's weird. Why are you fixated on that? You freaking weirdo. Creepy. But we know him as being a super creepy person. But, okay, no. But let's go to some examples here. Now, he says, it's not men trying to compete against women in sports. Okay, so here's the thing. Let me get to the quote here, okay? He says, it's only men trying to compete against women in sports, right? It's not women trying to play men's sports. It's men trying to play women's sports. Not true at all. Not true at all. Not true at all. First of all, trans women are women. They're not men. Okay? But even if you take that and try to say, well, okay, but what he's saying is true. I mean, trans women are generally trying to get into women's sports, and that's the only time you don't see it the other way. That's not true at all. There are trans men, i.e. men assigned to women at birth, who are competing in men's sports. Here's some examples of that. Boxer Patricio Manuel, whose record is so far 3-0. Manuel made history in 2018 when he became the first transgender person to fight in a professional boxing fight against a cisgender man. He won his first fight in 2018 with Mexican boxer Hugo Aguiar. Can't say his name. His latest fight was against American boxer Alexander Gutierrez. Manuel dominated every round and won by a unanimous decision on the judges' scorecards. So, trans man dominating sports, dominating cis men in boxing. Whoopsie. There's more. Shoyo Bailar, a trans man, was also the first openly trans NCAA Division I athlete to compete on the men's team. He swam for Harvard's men's team for 4 seasons before graduating in 2019, and his last swim placed him in the top 15% of NCAA competitors in his event. Trans man competing in men's sports. Chris Mosier, a trans man, became the first transgender athlete to represent the United States in an international competition after earning a spot at the men's sprint duathlon in 2015. Mosier is a Hall of Fame triathlete, All-American duathlete, 2-time national champion, and he has made the U.S. team to Team USA 6 times. 6 times. So, I mean, it happens. Now, if Jesse Waters did just a few minutes of research on this issue, he'd probably know this. Oh, but that would be inconvenient. And that would actually require him to do research, which he does not do. Okay. And look, he also probably doesn't do research because he doesn't care. Doesn't actually care about this issue. One more clip here, by the way. He claims that he has been called by other people. People are saying that he's actually been more of a champion for women's sports than Megan Rapinoe.
Some people have told me that I have actually done more for women's sports than Megan Rapinoe has done, that maybe she's a traitor in the war on women, and I have fought valiantly in that war, obviously on the women's side. That's not me saying that, and I actually disagree with that. I'm just saying it's something that's being said. Women have also told me, because she's a lesbian, I believe. Is that true? Yeah. That she may have a different feeling about the trans issue than straight women, that she feels an allyship. Am I using allyship correctly?
I've never heard the word, but I guess so.
And I respect that opinion, and I respect the fact that she's done great things for the United States on the field. She's a great leader, but this opinion is destructive. It is destroying women's sports. And as someone that's been an advocate for women, as she has, financially, she should understand that better than anybody.
People are saying that I did more for women's sports, than someone who's a very, very accomplished athlete in women's sports. Wow. I would really love to see Jesse Waters name some of the top women athletes right now, other than Rapinoe, because she's been in the news. I'm going to bet he couldn't do it because he doesn't care. By the way, unless they're talking about transgender women, no one on Fox News, no one on the right's talking about women's sports. Women's sports is massively underrepresented when it comes to media. In fact, the only time they seem to talk about women's sports is only to use it as a weapon against transgender people. According to a 2021 article in Sage, over the course of the last decades, a stunning 80% of top-ranked sports news and highlight shows in the U.S. have had zero studies on women's sports. Zero stories on women's sports. They don't cover women's sports. Unless, of course, they're using it to attack transgender women. And by the way, there's a huge dearth of media when it comes to women's sports. Now, I'm not interested in any sports, whether it be women's sports, men's sports, whatever. So I'm like an incredibly neutral observer to this, right? But look, they get no coverage, and it's not because they're not good athletes. It's not because they don't train hard or anything like that. It's mainly because there's no media coverage. There's a media problem here, and I think at the heart of that media problem is people that are super old school who think like Jesse Waters, who are, misogynistic, maybe not openly, but they hold these old attitudes like, nobody cares about women's sports, nobody ever going to watch it, so why even feature it, blah, blah, blah. No, it's that old school misogyny. I think that, again, if women's sports were featured half as much as men's sports, then there would be a lot more interest in it by the general sports watching public. But see, here's the thing. People like Jesse Waters, they're part of the problem. They claim to care so much about women's sports, but they've never done anything to help boost female athletes. They've never boosted women's sports to help them get more fair and equitable coverage. Never talked about that. The only time ever that women's sports gets referenced is order to use it to attack transgender athletes. To say that people are saying that Jesse Waters is a champion, a valiant champion for women's sports, more of a champion than someone who is a highly oppressive athlete, is just incredibly laughable. And again, deeply misogynistic, paternalistic, infantilizing, of course, women athletes, downplaying them, while claiming to care so much about them and to be fighting for them. No. You're not an ally to women. If anything, you're an enemy of women. And you show it every single day. Every time you open your mouth and say something weirdly creepy and misogynistic. Okay. Yeah, people are saying. It goes back to the old. People are saying. No, nobody's saying, Jesse. Nobody's saying that. I'd be very, very surprised to see anybody, anybody saying that. Even if, by the way, they agree that, they agree that, trans women shouldn't be in professional sports. I happen to disagree with that. I think that trans women should be able to be in professional sports. And of course, there are already rules and guidelines put forward to ensure that, there is equitable play. We already have all that stuff. So to me, it's a non-issue. But to them, it's the only thing they have. All right. Jesse watches certain types of trans videos. Who wants to put down money? There's so... Oh, okay. I don't have any evidence of this. But, I'm pretty sure a lot of the people who are the most transphobic are mainly chasers. I'm just going to say it right here. I don't have any evidence of it. But the fact that trans people live so, rent-free in their head so much, and that they can't help but talk about it, talk about them in the shower, their genitals, no, there's so, there's so many people that are, I think, chasers. Absolutely. There's also the history of girls and women fighting to compete with and join men's teams, wrestling and football that I know of. Yep. I feel like a lot of transphobics watch a lot of trans stuff. You should do a trans video and put it up on YouTube or Facebook or Rumble. Then you're gonna have everybody in there. Oh, so much. Just negativity. But so much attention. So much attention. All right. All right. Well, that's all I got today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share this stream. You might want to check out who the Dark Lady was, one of the highest decorated soldiers during World War I. I do remember reading about a story about a World War II Russian female sniper who I forget her name, but she was incredibly deadly. Had an incredibly high kill count. But again, I don't remember her name. Sounds like you disagree with Jake and Anna. I like that. Well, I do disagree with them on this issue. And I'm, pretty sure that they're aware of that disagreement. And I'm hoping that they will come around to facts and reality. Okay. So with that, do a raid here on, let's raid into Tina 2. Let's see what they're talking about. Everybody else, thank you again. Appreciate all the views, likes and shares, all that wonderful stuff. Become a patron. You can help out the show that way. Super chats, all that wonderful stuff. All right. See y'all tomorrow. Love you, and remember, change begins with you. Good night.
Testicles. Tighten up my meat. I like my meat tight.
Who's got a hammer?
space lasers.
Whoopsie.
Woke mob.
Sexual anarchy.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.
We have to keep